2023. And yes, I said June 4th already, but it's the start of the summer here. Hope everybody's doing well. And like I said, give a shout out to all the folks that have been asking about Steve. I saw him yesterday. He's doing much better, and I know he's listening to the show today. So again, thank you to everybody for all that support. It's been great. It really has been great. And so a bunch of stuff we got to talk about today. So let's jump right into it. Our monologue, of course, which is sponsored by Coriano Trucking of Summerhill, New York, and hope to see those guys pretty soon. They've been with us since day one, and we certainly appreciate it. So my monologue might kind of catch you guys off guard a little bit because my penchant for the NBA has diminished over the course of time, right? I mean, going way back to the Johnson, the Birds, and the Jordans, and all those guys. I loved it. The original Knicks with Frazier, DeBusschere, Bradley, Reed, etc. Um, but I do say that the playoffs have been good, right? And we got a good matchup. But my monologue is going to focus on this one guy who, and I've told you this time and time again, I have a lot of hours logged to watching this guy. Nikola Jokic from Denver, but he is just like your typical big man center, and the guy averages a triple double week after week after week, and he could shoot, but his passing ability is something you rarely see from a center. In today's game, guys shoot threes and whatever, but he is absolutely the architect of that. He's not an impressive looking guy. He looks kind of, big and I don't want to say lumpy, but he's not LeBron James physique type player, but he really has impressed me. And that's why I'm going to watch it. And, um, when we talk about guys, having triple doubles, I think Oscar Robertson may be the only guy that ever averaged a triple double in a season, unless maybe Will Chamberlain, but I don't think anybody else. And this guy does it night after night, and it looks like their time. But we're going to jump right into the NBA because we are going to game two, and Miami is down 1-0. But again, I keep talking week after week that this Jimmy Butler is just completely impressed me and with his leadership. And like I said, we know the backstory of his childhood and being brought up that way. But this series obviously isn't over. I mean, but Denver looks like this is going to be their time. But we don't know that. Jimmy Butler can carry it, but I don't think Jimmy Butler has the players around him like Jokic does. So it's going to be an uphill climb for them. I don't see Adebayo being able to cover Jokic, which is going to lead, to double coverage on him, which leaves Murray wide open, and he's been hot as hell. Scores 25 points a night, and it's really a good series. I'm actually excited to watch some of the basketball games, and but let's go back a week, right? Boston again. They seem to be the team that could absolutely make the finals, and they get knocked out again, right? And so, of course, the first things that are said is Joe Mazzulla. He's got to go. He blew he was down 3-0. That kind of stuff. But good thing for him because he's a good coach. These guys just didn't come up big. I mean, it's not that they didn't want to show up. And Tatum got hurt on the first play in Game 7, so that was a big, you know, uh, that kind of limited his ability to make his mark on this, right? So, um, Game 2 tonight. We're gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it for sure. Couple other quick notes though, right? We saw Monty Williams gets fired from Phoenix, right? And again, look at what he had to work with, right? They bring in Durant, that kind of probably upset the chemistry. I don't care what anybody says. Yes, he's a great player, but he couldn't come to a team, with a month and a half left in the season, and expect them just to walk to the NBA championship. And Booker is a great player. He's a great player, but Anton doesn't show up. Chris Paul never plays in the playoffs, so he takes the fall for that. But he ends up now, he's the head coach of the Detroit Pistons, right? So you knew he wasn't going to be out of work long. And look at the money he got. He's now the highest paid NBA coach of all time. And is he a good coach? Absolutely. But when you think about why he had to get fired, that kind of drives me nuts. But he's making a lot of money. And then, of course, Doc Rivers takes the fall because of inept play from James Harden and Joel Embiid. So now he gets fired, and he's going to absolutely land a job. No question about it. He deserves it. But Nick Nurse, to the 76ers, like that's going to be the missing piece. No, it's Embiid is not a big-time player. Shouldn't have been the MVP this year with Jokic, but they didn't want to give him 3 in a row, I guess. So who takes over in Phoenix? So Frank Vogel, right? So that's going to make the difference. You're letting Monty Williams go and bringing Frank Vogel in, who really was just a kind of a figurehead coach for the Lakers when LeBron's on the team. So, where's Doc Rivers going to end up? I don't know. I mean, I know the Knicks fans are split on Thibodeau. I like him. I think he's a good coach. But I'm not going to rule that possibility out. So we'll see how that plays out, right? But the NBA, a lot of moving parts, and soon enough after the season, we'll hear about the John Morant and what's going on with that. I think it was a good move by Adam Silver not to bring it up during the NBA Finals, but this guy, this guy's in distress, and the NBA has to send a message. You can't just go waving guns around whenever you go out. So we'll see how that was, but that was a good move by Silver. Right? So let's move on to the NHL, right? And last night was game 1 of the NHL Finals with the Vegas Golden Knights against the Cinderella Florida Panthers, who are doing. You know what? This series is so far from over, but Vegas goes up 1-0, and like I said, these players, the way that Tkachuk has played for the Florida Panthers, this is a big surprise. They barely made it into the playoffs, but we told you can get hot in hockey, and once that happens, you get on a roll. It's hard to stop. So this is going to be a hard-fought at least 6 games, possibly 7-game series. And it's a good story because Vegas is only 5 years into this league, and this is their second Stanley Cup final. So things can happen quickly in the NHL. So stay with that because, as I said, and I'll say it again, Stanley Cup, hardest trophy to win in sports. A couple other quick things, though. So and NHL coaches get fired left and right in this, and this is no different. The offseason, the Rangers fired Gallant. Barry Trotz, right, who I think is a great coach, but now he's the GM back in Nashville, and that's where he made his mark as one of the great coaches. And but he comes in right away and says this isn't working, so he fires John Haynes, and they hire Andrew Brunette. And I keep saying, okay, well, what are the Rangers doing? What are we waiting? What's taking time? You got to put somebody in that captain's chair to lead this team. And I'm still surprised that Gallant got fired, but there was a lot of controversy that's coming out, and him and Drew, he didn't see eye to eye after a particular game, and that ends up costing him his job. And ironically, who was the coach of the Vegas in their first Stanley Cup was Gerard Gallant, right? And now sticking with the Rangers, right? We always suspected that something wasn't right when they got Patrick Kane, and he wasn't playing like the Patrick Kane Hall of Famer that he's going to be. And it turns out there's a reason, and he had some sort of a hip issue. And I don't know who knew about it, who didn't know about it, but the fans certainly didn't know about it. And we expected him to come in, and he was going to be quote unquote the missing piece for the Rangers. Who again, great regular season, but it's really doesn't matter when it comes to the playoffs. You win or you go home, and that's what happened to the Rangers. So a lot of moving parts in the NHL too. So there's good stuff going on there. So stick with the finals here. So you got the NBA and the NHL finals going basically alternate nights. Not sure why. Again, I keep telling you why these NBA guys get 4 days off and the NHL guys get one. It's mind-boggling to me. So let's move on to Major League Baseball. And, it's got a couple of quick points I wanted to bring up with this one. First of all, we always talk about the Yankees and the Mets, right? We're East Coast guys. I'm a Yankee fan, a lot of Met fans around. And, these guys, week from week, they could win games, they lose games, right? So the Yankees were, an abomination. And even I said it. They didn't make any significant off-season deals to replace, Donaldson and Hicks. Well, Hicks is now gone, finally. But this Aaron Judge, he is carrying this team. He's having this MVP type season again. Obviously, it's going to come down to him and Shohei Ohtani, who's just wow, And he's like a Jokic to me. We don't get to see them play a lot because they're on the West Coast. But this guy was 4 for 5 last night. He's having an MVP type season, but so is Aaron Judge. And Aaron Judge made a catch last night in Dodger Stadium, and we were watching the game. And I mean, you got to fix this. A guy that big, 6'7", 250, crashes into the wall. It's not supposed to give. Doors aren't supposed to open. I mean, this is so dangerous. And, it could have turned out to be, a very unfortunate situation, not only for the Yankees and Aaron Judge, but for Major League Baseball. That should not be a Major League Baseball outfield wall. It just can't be that way. And Dodger Stadium is legendary. I've been there for a game. It's great. The atmosphere is great. All of the, Hollywood goes to games now when it's on national TV. But that was a dangerous situation, but what a great play. And, so the Yankees have starting to pull it together. And they're doing it with the pitching staff, which I didn't think was good enough to keep them afloat. But you want to talk about one guy carrying the team, that's Aaron Judge. And then on the other side, you have the Mets. And again, the Mets were playing sub 500 baseball for the beginning of the season, and people started panicking. And I'm saying, well, I told you, I didn't see any wholesale changes on the Mets either. Now they're starting a rookie third baseman and a rookie catcher, and these guys haven't come, but now Verlander and Scherzer are starting to pitch well, and they've started to, win games. And Buck Wall is the best ever. So he's keeping this team, and the Mets are hanging in there. But you look at the money they're paying these guys, and I keep bringing like Tatis up and all these other guys in the San Diego Padres. Francisco Lindor is hitting like 210. I mean, you can't. I know, and then everyone will say, "Yeah, but what about Andrew Volpe for the shortstop for the Yankees? He's hitting 200, if that." Well, he's a rookie, and he's not making $40 million a year or whatever Lindor is making. So these guys have to come up big. But when you look at the landscape of Major League Baseball, the Yankees, yeah, they started off behind. The Rays got off to a historic start. Things are starting to balance out in a 162 game season, which we know is going to happen. So we'll see how that pans out. But I think the two biggest surprises in Major League Baseball, still the Baltimore Orioles and the Arizona Diamondbacks. I mean, I know producer Rob is our resident Pittsburgh Pirates fan, but they're coming back to earth. They're just about 500 now, and they'll be sub 500 before the end of the season because they just don't have the talent, and they're missing this kid Cruz at short. But baseball is, what are we, a quarter of the way through? Maybe a little more. But there's just, the Met fans and Yankee fans are so finicky. Just let these guys play the 162 game season and see how it works out. Because, The Yankees are only 6 games out of first place, and there's a long, long way to go. But again, when you look at the San Diego Padres and that payroll, I mean, I just it's mind-boggling to me. You try to buy this whole super team concept, right? They do it in the NBA, and um, it doesn't always work out as planned, right? Just a couple other one-offs. You see this guy Chris Sale, who when he's on is one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, but he's injury prone and he's hurt again. Came back from I think Tommy John or something. You hate to see when a guy just has that bug that he has all this potential. And if Chris Sale stayed healthy for like Scherzer and Verlander have done over the years, the guy would be going to the Hall of Fame. But otherwise, now he's going to be known as a great pitcher, but couldn't stay healthy, and that's a shame. But he's a really really good baseball player, and like I said, it's the usual suspects in the National League. It's the Atlanta Braves, it's the Dodgers, it's the Mets. Phillies are starting to go the wrong way again. But you know what? Again, it's a long season. Right around this time last year, they fired Joe Girardi and rallied and made the World Series. So you never know. Long, long road. Couple other things from the NFL. It's great. I haven't had to even utter Aaron Rodgers' name once for the past month. Right? So he's settled. He's going to lead the Jets to the promised land. Yeah, good luck with that. But the Jets, they do have a good team. But when you look at the NFL, and of course with this Jimmy Garoppolo situation, and now Tom Brady becomes partial owner of the Vegas Raiders. Is he coming back? Well, obviously he's not coming back. I mean, Tom Brady dedicated his life to football 365 days. And the past 3 months when he announced his retirement, he's not doing anything football related. So now he's the partial owner with Mark Davis in Las Vegas, which I guess kind of makes sense. I mean, the guy wasn't going anywhere. He's got to be on the scene. He's got to be front and center. So we'll see how that goes. But I saw a good signing from the Buffalo Bills. They signed this guy, Ed Oliver, who's their number one pick a few years ago. And, he's starting to turn into a number one draft pick type player. And the Bills give him a 4-year, $68 million contract. Again, does it even make you go, wow, that's way too much money? No, this is what the market is. But he's a really, really good player. Pivotal part of that Buffalo defense. You let Josh Allen run the offense, and this guy's kind of the leader on the defense. So when guys get rewarded like that, like Dexter Lawrence did, just like that, from an NHL perspective, because it takes a couple of years for defensive linemen to mature into the player that these guys have become, and I think it's awesome to see, right? So a couple other things. It's the French Open, and I know it's not getting the viewership or the interest that it would if Rafael Nadal was playing, which is rare, right? I mean, he is the French Open. He's won it at least 10 times, and he's not playing in this, so that leaves Joker. And I told you this 2 years ago. This kid Carlos Alcaraz is one of the next, group of guys, right? We've seen Federer, he's gone. Nadal, he's close to gone. Djokovic is still hanging on, so he's going to end up with the most wins in the majors. But these young kids, there's a lot of good young kids on both the men's and women's side of tennis. And, I know Mike Garvey's a big tennis guy, so this is great. He gets to watch matches at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because of the time difference, and it's awesome. It's actually great. It really is. So you got these other young kids like Taylor Fritz and Sinner. He gets knocked out, so it's wide open. But it's hard to pick against Novak because he's just he's become a legend while he's still playing. And, I don't necessarily like his demeanor on the court and all that kind of stuff and off the court, but he still is a formidable guy. And, unless these young kids can step it up at this, but Alcaraz is only 20 years old, for crying out loud. So these guys have time. But the French Open it's some good tennis. Very, very good tennis. So a couple other things. So we jump right into our book recommendation, and this is an interesting book. And if you haven't read it, it's called League of Denial, and it's about the NFL's concussion situation and the way that the NFL tried to sweep this under the rug. The movie with Will Smith was Concussion, based on that book, which doesn't do anywhere near the justice. If you read that book, and it was written by two guys, I think they're brothers, Steve Farnow and Mark Farnow Wade. It's a great, great book. And I read the book, and the one thing that stood out for me was this concussion thing was something that Troy Aikman actually said. The third Super Bowl championship that he won, he actually said, "I don't even remember playing in the game." And now, if that's not the definition of a concussion and the potential long-term effects that we're seeing over and over again, and still, but the focus of that League of Denial book was obviously the Mike Webster story. So this CTE is a real thing. But it's a great, great book, and I would hope that people can read it. Don't just watch the movie, because it doesn't do it justice. But so last week, I gave a book recommendation on the Kennedy assassination. So we're back to sports for this week, and I have a great book lined up for you next week, and I'll give him a shout out in a minute, because it was one of our loyal listeners sent an email that was. Well, let me jump right in. It was Jim Smith, one of our loyal listeners, and he brought this up, and he actually referenced the book that I'm going to have as our book recommendation for next week. And Jim, thank you. He wrote a very lengthy and articulate article on sports and this whole thing with paying athletes from these major universities. They're all making money on nil and transfer portals. And, Saban and the SEC came out and said, yeah, maybe we should treat these guys as employees of the university, which, my position since day one. I think getting a full ride to an academic institution and a scholarship, if you add all that up, what that costs, I think that's pretty damn good. But now the whole landscape has changed, and Jim brought up some great, great points, about whether or not this is the right way to go about it. Are we turning amateur sports into professional sports? I don't know. So we'll see. But Jim, thanks for that email. It really was good. And I believe you read League of Denial, which is just a really powerful book. And it kind of makes you sick when you think about what the NFL is doing and the way they've turned their backs on these retired players that are dealing. There's just story after story of guys that have committed suicide, or they were so concussion ridden with the CTE, and it's a real problem. And I've always said, listen, I was a football player, and I know I had many concussions as well. Wasn't diagnosed back then. So I don't know. Maybe I'll donate my brain to science and see how much CTE is in there, right? And just get a comment from Miriam. Thank you for the loyal support, and just great stuff. Couple other quick notes, though. I wanted to give a shout out. I got a chance to see my nephew play this Little League baseball game last week, and at the same time, just before that game, he had tryouts for the traveling team. And why is the traveling team something special? Because that was what Steve and I were. Steve went on and played high school baseball. I didn't. I just stuck with football. But we did play on traveling teams together, and we made some of our greatest friends. And I'm so happy for my grandson Logan because he's now playing catcher, which I don't think he took to at first, but now he realizes, and it's very, very um, exciting to see the next generation of baseball players. And you can drive through Oakland, New Jersey. There's 10 baseball fields, and they're always packed with kids. And this is what Steve and I did our whole lives growing up. And I'm so happy that he's carrying on that Monahan tradition, even though his last name is Miller. And one other quick shout out I wanted to give was to my granddaughter Hayden, who just looked adorable yesterday at her dance recital. She's just has this magnetic smile, and I'm so proud of her. I wasn't able to make it, but I had some pictures, and I just look at it saying, wow, how fortunate I am, not only to be a grandfather to these kids and a father to my daughters, but, and a host of sports with Mono and Mono. So it puts it all into perspective that, there's a lot of bad in the world, but there's also a lot of good, right? So let's jump into our random points of interest and just a couple of things. And they keep recycling some of these stories. And the one that caught my attention was this Le'Veon Bell. Right, here's a guy that left all this money on the table. Right, he was in the prime of his sport, and of course, first and foremost, our random points of interest week after week is sponsored by Lynch Toyota of Manchester, Connecticut, who I will see up for our annual Niagara fishing trip in September sometime. And Mike, thank you, and thank you for your support. But this Le'Veon Bell thing is just it just goes to show that some guys just can't stand success. And listen, don't feel bad for the guy. He made these decisions. He's the one that walked away from the money in Pittsburgh, but he signed some contract after sitting out a year, and he signs it with the Jets, and they paid him like 30 million guaranteed. But now, you know what? Your days are done, Mr. Bell. You had an opportunity to make your mark in history, and you were on your way to having a career like an Emmitt Smith or those kind of players, and you blew it. So no sympathy here. And yeah, he was smoking pot during just before his NFL game. So this is, you got to ask yourself, what does employers like to think about that, right? Paying them all that money. Oh, can't stand it. But a couple other things. Again, we talked last week about Glenn Kuiper making some stupid remark on air, cost him his job for the Oakland A's. And the same thing happens again. Glenn Schembechler, right? Son of Bo Schembechler, legendary Michigan coach, gets hired by the university. And this was by Jim Harbaugh himself, actually handpicked him. And he does the same stupid thing. Here he is recruiting for, one of the top 5 college football programs, and he gets himself involved with these online Twitters and these racist and terrible people making these statements, and he's thumbs up and doing all this. So just another example of a guy that, how stupid can you be? I mean, even if you don't believe in what's right or wrong, you're a public figure now, and a lot of people are watching, and it cost him his job. So again, and this is Bo Schembechler's son with ties to Michigan, and these guys just put their foot in their mouth, and that cost him his job, and hey, rightfully so. So jumping up on a point that I made that Jim Smith brought up about the transfer portal in college basketball, it was one interesting guy, and I know this is true to Jim's heart because both Steve and I and Jim Smith are, North Carolina basketball historians, right? And we've seen, over the years from the Dean Smith era, and just great college basketball. And they had this great player, this kid Caleb Love. And I don't know why somebody would leave North Carolina other than somebody's writing him a check that's bigger than what North Carolina is paying him. And this kid, Caleb Love, was a great, great player. Initially announced he was transferring to Michigan. And, they came up with some nonsensical story that, certain credits weren't going to transfer. I mean, of course they would. I mean, this is the transfer portal. So he says, I'm leaving North Carolina, going to Michigan. That falls through. Now he ends up in Arizona. And you have to wonder, I mean, is it really that simple? Is it really the fact that Michigan offered him this amount of money? And again, this goes to paying college basketball players, but it's out there. I've always supported Nil. I didn't support it to the level where, it initially started out as these guys, these video games, and they weren't getting recognized for their role in that. And I always felt it was right that they did have the opportunity to capitalize on their fame. But this was kind of an odd story. Kid could still turn out to be a good player, but you have to wonder what's behind the scenes, and was this the initial end state we were looking for with Nil? I really don't know. I don't know. But anyway, so to our business, Rob and I and Steve, right, we do podcasts and we host a sports show and we talk about the events of, the current state of each individual sport. And so this interesting thing was this Shannon Sharpe, right? He has this highly rated show, which I don't understand, A, why, and B, because it was Skip Bayless, who was proven to be an absolute fraud. Embellished his resume, and I'll give Stephen A. Smith credit. He called him out on it. And yet this guy continues to have a show. I mean, really, you don't think sports with Mano and Mano has kept their credibility since day one and so forth? But Shannon Sharpe throws up his hands and says, this guy, I can't work with him anymore. So I give him kudos for that. And I just don't understand. I mean, either Skip Bayless has the best agent on the planet, but I can't sit and watch that for 2 seconds. I mean, not 2 seconds, because he doesn't have any credibility. And I feel the same way in New York sports with this guy Carton, right, who is stealing from his friends, and he had this whole backstory. I can't listen to this anymore. I can't listen to these people. I told you one of my favorite shows that I do like in the morning because it's early and they actually cover stuff. I like the Boomer and Geo show. I think they bring a lot of good insight. I like this guy, Jerry Recco, who I mentioned I met at a Rutgers baseball game last year. That's what, these guys have never compromised their integrity, and they actually give you some information. I really don't want to hear what Michael Kay's opinion, or Don LaGreca, or Peter Rosenberg's opinion on things where I'm not sure they're all that informed. I did say I always liked Michael Kay as an announcer for the Yankees. But like I said, this whole Skip Bayless thing, the fact that he has a job in this business is mind-boggling to me. So we brought this other thing up about Deion Sanders and taking over the University of Colorado, right? Basically came in and forced everybody out. Says, I'm coming in, and all of these scholarship players go find another place to play. So everybody's all in on this. This guy hasn't proven himself to be anything, resembling a coach of a Division I football. He's got no proven record, but maybe he's a good administrator. But everybody's buying into this. So Colorado, I haven't seen a Colorado football game on television in 20 years since the Cordell Stewart days, and when they actually won a national championship under Bill McCarthy. But now they get primetime games, and this is great marketing, I guess, for college football. But I'm not buying into it. And if anybody expects them to contend for a national championship, because if Deion Sanders is the head coach, I don't know where your thinking is. So good luck with that. Another interesting thing from a former ball player, Steve Garvey, right? And we as Yankee fans know him all too well. He was part of that Dodgers team that was, you know, Yankees beat in 77 and 78, and they ultimately won, a World Series. And he goes off to San Diego and has, finished his career in pretty good style, but he's running for the Senate in California, right? So you know what? Maybe this is a good thing. Maybe we're running out of these lifelong politicians. That would be a fresh face. The guy, was always in the news, and he was a great baseball player. So hey, why not the United States Senate? What else do we got going for us, right? Uh, one other quick thing, and we've talked about this, right? Especially past couple weeks. Brooks Koepka wins the PGA Championship, and we've spoken about this ad nauseum about Live Golf and my feelings on it and so forth. And the fact that they can play in these majors, I don't agree with. But this week is the Memorial, right? And when you think of the Memorial, it is Jack Nicklaus's course. He designed it. This is a great event, kind of almost considered the fifth major in golf. And he came right out and said, I don't consider these guys part of 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 the PGA Tour golf scene anymore. They made their decision, and we're going to stick by our decision. We got a great field out here at the Memorial, and when Jack Nicklaus speaks about golf, you got to listen. You really have to listen because it's amazing. And Rob, I think I sent you a picture. If you could pull that up while we're on the picture story of golf right here, because it's I just saw this in my USGA magazine this week. It's the Hollywood. There's a whole bunch of pictures of Hollywood actors, Bogart and Gable and Gene Kelly and these guys. They loved golf. But Rob, if you could pull that picture up, there's a great picture. You guys know, as I brought up, one of my favorite golf icons and idols of all time was Arnold Palmer. And from an acting perspective, when Rob can pull up the picture, there it is. Look at that. Now that's Arnold Palmer on the left. That's Jackie Gleason on the right, and his typical pose. And I sent it to my brother today. It says, I used to have this picture hanging over my bar in my house, and it's hanging up at his golf club up in Weekapaug, Rhode Island. So I just love this picture because Jackie Gleason is one of my favorite uh, Hollywood guys of all time. Arnold Palmer, one of my all-time sports idols. Great picture, Rob. Thanks for pulling that up. So we move on to our notable passings, and it's kind of been, good news on that front. But there was a notable passing that kind of had special meaning to me too. Bill McGovern, and Bill McGovern, 60 years old. And here's the tie-in. He was a Bergen Catholic star, standout football player at Holy Cross. I think led the nation in interceptions one year as a defensive back. And he went on to such, a great career. He coached at Pitt. He coached at, Holy Cross, Boston College, a couple stints in the NFL with Chip Kelly at the Eagles, and he was a linebackers coach for the New York Football Giants. And you know what? This comes because I played against Bill McGovern. We were actually the same age, and that was notable to me because of the connection. And we've talked about it time and time again. He was a Bergen Catholic guy, and I was a St. Joe's guy, and we talk about Bergen Bosco, and that's the marquee schools in New Jersey, and now they play a national schedule. But Bill McGovern comes from an amazing sports family. His brother Jimmy was on the PGA Tour. I don't know if he's on the senior tour now, but you go down the list, and this is like the the sports family of Bergen County from Oradell, New Jersey, Bill McGovern and all his siblings and nieces and nephews. Just it really hit home for me, that somebody I played and he gets at a young age. He was actually the defensive coordinator at UCLA, again with the Chip Kelly ties, named last year, and then he diagnosed with cancer, missed most of the second half of the season, and he passed away. But rest in peace. And like I said, on the field we were rivals, but off the field, mutual respect from Sports with Mono and Mono at a just a great career in sports. And I certainly wanted to mention that. And I did have, I think we put it up last week, but it was an interesting picture. Talked to Luke Whippler's dad. So Luke is at his first OTAs, and whether he's going to make the team, they absolutely love him. He's a smart kid, and he's going to be a football player in this league. But I wanted to say, continued good luck on your road to the NFL, Luke, and we're all pulling for you. And I wanted to just one other note. I did send a text to my nephew Brendan, pitching coach at Rutgers, who, they lost to Michigan State and Nebraska in the Big Ten tournament, which was really the only way they were going to get in to the College World Series picture, and that didn't happen. So, they had another good year, but not good enough to get into the tournament. I think last year they got snubbed for sure. But this year, so you rebuild, you move on, and good luck to Brendan going forward. Who's also going to become a dad soon, by the way. So, again, I just wanted to continuously say thank you to everybody who's offered support for Steve. Today's a good day. I'm actually going to a little baseball game, not a Yankee game, a minor league game, this afternoon. I told you that you can't just expect to pay $300 to cross bridges and pay tolls and all this other stuff at Yankee Stadium. But, I said, if you're out and about, catch a minor league game, catch a little league game, catch a high school game, because these are the future stars of baseball and all that kind of stuff. And one other quick shout out to my nephew Sean, who scored this overtime winning goal last week. I saw the video. It was just a big moment for him. He's had a really, really good year on the lacrosse field, and I know Steve misses seeing him play week after week after week, but he's seen him a few times, and that was a big goal for somebody, who's close to the Monahans, and I'm very happy for him playing at Ramapo High School. And had a conversation with somebody last week, and like the popularity of lacrosse just seems to be growing and growing and growing, both on a high school and a collegiate level. I mean, Notre Dame wins their first lacrosse championship, beating Duke, right? Notorious, powerhouse in lacrosse, and you don't assimilate obviously Notre Dame with lacrosse, but they win their first national championship. So, Sean, we'll get them next year. You got your senior year coming up. Make your mark, and the scouts will come looking. So, listen, folks. Again, thank you for everything. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the emails. Send us one at sportswithmonoandmono@gmail.com. And Rob, quick congrats to you. You were part of you weekly bring up the St. Mary's baseball team, and they won their sectional state championship. There's Rob. Look at that. Producer Rob in the mix, right? Good for you. Congratulations on that. I know you broadcast the games too, so that's a big win for your program. And like I said, I have ties to them because I used to play them in football. So St. Mary's, and not known for their baseball, but that's a great season for them. So listen, folks, thank you again, and please send us an email at sportswithmonoandmono@gmail.com. We'd love to talk about it, and can't wait to see you guys on next week's show. So enjoy your beautiful Sunday. Nice here in New Jersey. So wherever you are, get out, see a game, enjoy the playoffs, and we'll see you guys next next week.